At first, it looked like another familiar royal balcony moment. Prince Louis, fourth in line to the British throne, doing what he does best, pulling faces, shifting from restless energy to unexpected stillness in seconds, the tiny expressions that somehow travel faster than headlines. The country has grown oddly protective of him, as if his laughter belongs to everyone. But this time, something felt different. The cameras caught the smile, yes, but they also caught the pause, a hesitation that didn't match the mischief people expect. And it came at a moment when the royal family was already navigating a storm of health concerns and public uncertainty. When Buckingham Palace released a carefully worded statement shortly after, attention shifted instantly, not toward the king, not toward the Princess of Wales, toward Louis. And that's when quiet concern turned into something much heavier. The statement itself was brief, almost restrained, but the language carried unusual weight. The palace thanked the public for its continued understanding while the family managed a private matter involving Prince Louis. For longtime royal watchers, that phrasing stood out immediately. The monarchy does not often draw direct attention to its youngest members unless absolutely necessary. Within minutes, networks began replaying the announcement, analysts dissecting every word, every comma, searching for context. Yet no dramatic details followed. No medical bulletin, no emergency, just silence. And sometimes, in royal communication, silence speaks louder than explanation. The question wasn't simply what was happening. It was why the palace felt compelled to say anything at all. In a family trained for composure, even small acknowledgments can signal larger shifts unfolding behind closed doors. To understand the tension surrounding the statement, you have to consider the timing. The royal household has been navigating an emotionally complex period, with public updates about King Charles's health and Princess Catherine's recovery dominating headlines for months. Even when managed carefully, such news reshapes the rhythm of family life. Children, no matter how shielded, sense change. They notice whispers, altered schedules, quieter hallways. Royal commentators were quick to emphasize that there was no indication of crisis involving Prince Louis himself. Yet, the palace's acknowledgement suggested something more human than ceremonial. Not scandal, not drama, but adjustment. Observers began revisiting recent appearances, studying footage more closely, asking whether the usually exuberant young royal seemed more subdued. It was subtle, not alarming, but enough to spark conversation across a nation already on edge. Then came Prince William's public engagement days later, where he addressed broader family matters with unusual candor. While he did not disclose private details about his children, his tone carried unmistakable gravity. He spoke about balance, about being present as both a future king and a father during a demanding chapter for their family. It wasn't a confession, it wasn't a revelation, but it felt real. He acknowledged that children process uncertainty differently, and that stability at home had become the priority above all else. For many watching, that single emphasis reframed everything. This was not about royal optics. It was about parenting under pressure. And in that moment, the image of Prince Louis shifted, from playful headline maker to young boy growing up during an unexpectedly heavy season. Inside royal residences like Adelaide Cottage, life reportedly continues with intentional normalcy. School routines remain structured. Private time is guarded carefully. Sources close to the household have consistently emphasized that the children are surrounded by reassurance and support. Yet, even reassurance does not erase reality. The past year has required adjustments few families anticipate, let alone families living under constant scrutiny. What makes this moment different is not confirmed crisis, but confirmed prioritization. The palace signaling awareness, William signaling focus, a subtle recalibration taking place in real time. And while the world may only see fragments, a wave from a balcony, a brief appearance at an event, the deeper story may simply be this: a royal family choosing steadiness over spectacle. But whether that choice quiets public curiosity is another question entirely. Public fascination with Prince Louis has always been built on contrast. In a family defined by restraint, he represents spontaneity. In ceremonies measured down to the second, he represents unpredictability. That contrast is precisely why even subtle changes draw attention. Recent appearances, though limited, showed a child still smiling, still engaged, yet noticeably more reserved in certain moments. Royal analysts were careful not to overstate it. Children evolve, situations change. But what made observers pause wasn't behavior alone, it was context. The monarchy is in transition, balancing tradition with modern transparency. And when the palace chooses to acknowledge a private matter involving a child, even without elaboration, it signals that emotional well-being now carries weight equal to public duty. That shift in itself marks a quiet turning point. For decades, royal children were expected to adapt quickly to public life, often without acknowledgement of the pressures attached to it. History shows a pattern of composure over vulnerability. Yet today's approach appears more deliberate, more protective. William and Catherine have consistently emphasized privacy for their children, limiting exposure compared to previous generations. That makes the recent statement even more striking. It suggests a conscious decision to address concern before speculation spirals beyond control. Communication in this case may not be about revealing details. It may be about setting boundaries. In an era where every image becomes a headline within seconds, silence can breed rumors faster than truth can contain them. By speaking briefly, the palace may have aimed to prevent exactly that escalation. There is also the psychological weight of living through highly public family health updates. Even when handled sensitively, national attention can transform personal recovery into global discussion. Experts in child development often note that children absorb emotional climates long before they understand medical terminology. They sense seriousness. They detect shifts in tone. They respond to uncertainty in ways that vary widely. Some grow quieter, others more energetic. Some seek reassurance more frequently. None of this indicates crisis. It indicates humanity. And perhaps that is what makes this chapter resonate so widely. Behind titles and protocol, there are parents recalibrating, siblings adjusting, and routines evolving. The monarchy may symbolize continuity, but families, even royal ones, still move through seasons of strain and adaptation. What truly altered public perception was not a dramatic revelation, but an accumulation of signals, fewer appearances, carefully managed photographs, a noticeable emphasis from palace aides on normal schooling and family time. Those phrases might seem ordinary, yet in royal language they often carry strategic intention. They reassure without elaborating, they calm without confirming. And that delicate balance reveals something significant. The institution understands the scrutiny its youngest members face. Every laugh becomes analysis. Every quiet moment becomes theory. By reinforcing routine, the palace appears determined to anchor the narrative in stability rather than speculation. Still, the paradox remains. The more carefully something is protected, the more intensely it is discussed. And that tension continues to hover over every update. Ultimately, this may not be a story about hidden crisis at all. It may be a story about evolving priorities inside one of the world's most visible families. The monarchy has weathered wars, abdications, scandals, and seismic cultural change. But rarely has it openly centered emotional well-being in its messaging. If the recent acknowledgement regarding Prince Louis signals anything, it is that childhood is no longer expected to quietly absorb institutional pressure. Instead, there is visible intention to shield, to slow down, to recalibrate. That alone represents a generational shift. Yet as the public waits for the next appearance, the next photograph, the next subtle clue, one question lingers quietly in the background. How does a royal family protect innocence while living permanently in the spotlight? One of the most striking elements in all of this is how carefully the family has controlled visibility. In previous generations, royal children were often introduced to public duty at very young ages, gradually conditioned to absorb ceremony as normal life. But William and Catherine have drawn clearer lines, fewer walkabouts, fewer staged interviews, more emphasis on school routines and private milestones. That protective instinct feels even stronger now. Insiders consistently describe a household focused on calm structure, predictable mornings, limited media exposure, and reassurance that home remains steady regardless of headlines. That doesn't suggest crisis. It suggests strategy, a deliberate slowing down. And when a family as historically duty-driven as this one slows down, observers inevitably wonder what prompted the shift in tempo. There's also the reality of perception versus reality. The public sees curated glimpses, a wave at Christmas, a carefully chosen birthday portrait, a short appearance during major national events. Those moments project unity and composure, but curated visibility does not equal constant normalcy. Every family, royal or not, experiences private recalibration during periods of health uncertainty. The difference here is scale. Millions watch for cues. Analysts parse body language. Social media amplifies every frame. That kind of scrutiny magnifies ordinary childhood changes into potential narratives. A thoughtful pause becomes concern. A quieter expression becomes evidence. The palace understands that dynamic intimately, which may explain why even brief acknowledgments are crafted with surgical precision. Enough transparency to ground speculation, but not enough detail to invite intrusion. Another dimension rarely discussed openly is the emotional education happening in real time. Growing up in proximity to national responsibility means absorbing language about duty, legacy, and continuity earlier than most children ever would. Even without direct explanation, the atmosphere shifts when senior family members face medical challenges. Schedules tighten, conversations grow more measured, security becomes more visible. Children may not know every detail, but they notice change. What appears to be a simple palace update can reflect weeks of quiet adjustment inside the household, and that reframes the narrative entirely. Instead of asking what is wrong, perhaps the more accurate question is how the family is adapting, how they are redefining stability during a chapter that demands both resilience and softness simultaneously. Royal commentators have increasingly pointed out that this generation is navigating parenthood differently. William has spoken before about mental health, emotional literacy, and the importance of openness. Catherine has long championed early childhood development initiatives. That context matters. It suggests that if there are adjustments being made for Prince Louis, they would likely center on support, not secrecy. Modern monarchy cannot operate exactly as it once did. Public trust now depends as much on relatability as on tradition. By subtly signaling care without oversharing, the family may be attempting to model something broader. That strength includes seeking stability, that leadership includes protecting childhood, and that visibility does not require vulnerability to be exploited. Still, unanswered space invites imagination. The palace statement remains intentionally sparse. No timeline, no follow-up clarification, just emphasis on privacy and gratitude for public understanding. And perhaps that is the true pivot in this story. Not a dramatic incident, not a hidden emergency, but a conscious decision to draw a boundary around a child's inner world. In a media landscape that thrives on access, boundaries can feel provocative. They create curiosity precisely because they restrict information. And so the narrative continues to build, not through explosive revelations, but through quiet restraint. The monarchy is signaling something subtle yet significant. Childhood, even royal childhood, is not a public resource. What makes this chapter particularly compelling is not what has been revealed, but what has not. Historically, royal institutions survived by projecting permanence, by ensuring that personal difficulty never overshadowed public continuity. Yet in recent months, continuity itself has required recalibration. When senior members reduce engagements due to health, the visual architecture of monarchy changes. Fewer balcony moments, fewer ceremonial anchors. In that vacuum, even the youngest faces become symbolic reassurance. Prince Louis unintentionally embodies that reassurance. His energy has often acted as emotional relief during formal occasions. So when the palace acknowledges a private matter concerning him, however gently phrased, it disrupts that symbolic comfort. And disruption inside an institution built on stability inevitably magnifies curiosity beyond the words themselves. There is also an undercurrent of generational transition quietly shaping the atmosphere. King Charles represents one era of royal expectation. William represents another. The contrast is subtle but meaningful. Where previous generations often absorbed pressure silently, William has shown greater willingness to acknowledge emotional complexity. That shift doesn't dismantle tradition, but it does soften its edges. If Prince Louis is being shielded more deliberately during this period, it aligns with that philosophy. It suggests an evolution in how royal children are prepared for public life, not through immediate exposure, but through gradual understanding. That alone signals change. And change, within monarchy, rarely happens without internal debate and careful calculation. Observers have noted that the family's messaging has increasingly emphasized normalcy, school attendance, time outdoors, structured routines. Those details may seem mundane, yet they serve a strategic function. They ground the narrative in everyday stability. They counteract dramatic speculation without engaging it directly. But even normalcy, when highlighted repeatedly, invites deeper reading. Why stress routine unless routine feels fragile? Why reiterate reassurance unless reassurance has been requested? These are the questions circulating quietly among commentators. None imply crisis. They imply awareness. An institution that understands public psychology is attempting to manage it carefully, offering just enough visibility to maintain trust while fiercely protecting the emotional boundaries of its youngest members. At the center of it all remains a simple reality. Prince Louis is still a child growing up during a uniquely intense moment in his family's history. Public affection for him is genuine, but affection can morph into expectation without warning. Every grin becomes symbolic optimism. Every absence becomes symbolic concern. That weight, even when unintended, exists. And perhaps the palace's subtle communication acknowledges that invisible pressure. Instead of allowing narrative to spin unchecked, they appear to be redefining the balance between access and autonomy. The message is understated yet firm. Support is welcome, intrusion is not. And that recalibrated boundary may ultimately protect not only one child, but the tone of royal discourse moving forward. So, where does that leave the story? Not in scandal, not in secrecy, but in transition. A royal family navigating health updates, public scrutiny, and generational change simultaneously. a father prioritizing presence alongside preparation for kingship, a mother known for championing early childhood development, modeling it within her own home, and a young boy, beloved for his spontaneity, learning resilience within a structure watched by millions. The palace may never elaborate beyond its initial acknowledgement. It may not need to, because sometimes the most significant shift isn't a headline, it's a boundary quietly drawn. And in the months ahead, every carefully managed appearance will carry a subtle undertone. The monarchy is evolving, one protected childhood at a time. If there is one undeniable shift emerging from this period, it is the recalibration of what royal strength looks like. For centuries, strength meant silence, composure, endurance without visible strain. But modern audiences respond differently. They recognize steadiness not just in ceremony, but in care. By acknowledging a private matter involving Prince Louis, however briefly, the palace signaled that protection can coexist with transparency. That acknowledgement reframed the conversation. It redirected attention away from speculation and toward empathy, and in doing so, it subtly altered public expectation. The monarchy is no longer relying solely on mystique to preserve authority. It is allowing measured humanity to reinforce it. That evolution may prove more consequential than any single announcement. There is also a broader cultural context shaping reactions. Conversations about childhood well-being, emotional resilience, and mental health have become central in modern society. William and Catherine have repeatedly aligned their public initiatives with those themes. Therefore, any adjustment made within their own family carries symbolic weight. It suggests consistency between advocacy and action. While no dramatic details have been confirmed, the emphasis on stability, privacy, and gradual exposure reflects a parenting philosophy grounded in awareness. That matters, because the public often scrutinizes not just what royal families say, but whether they embody it. In this instance, embodiment appears to be leading the narrative quietly, without spectacle.